Welcome to My View from the Piano Bench. We do this on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. here on my Joel Holt's Notes YouTube channel, in addition to Piano for My Friends on Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. 2.5+ years and still doing it. Thank you for your interest. Thank you to those of you who watch regularly and who provide support and encouragement through the means that you'll find on the support page on my website. You'll see a link to that in the video description. If you watch regularly, in particular, I'll ask you to consider that. Not necessary, but helpful, appreciated, and to some extent necessary. And if you are a regular participant here, the Patreon option might be an appropriate take on the tip jar for you. So anyhow, thanks again, and we're going to dive into what's been really on my radar screen or on my heart or just in my view as of late. The topic is titled Inspired and Inspiring. So I have said for quite some time now that I consider my role as a performer as a discovery. For people to encounter something that they don't find in the mainstream of culture, but hopefully something of substance and something that is a bridge or a window or door into a larger arena to discover other things related to it. And it's a acknowledgement and a belief and a conviction that, you know, the arts are to be discovered to enrich our lives and to bring substance, increase substance into our experience. And, you know, I would define arts as substantive expression, you know, something beyond the superficial, something of meaning, expressed in cultures throughout history and in many ways. And it's also an acknowledgement that I'm, you know, a niche market, niche, however you say it, and some people will like it, and some people won't like it so much. You know, I try to be as appealing to a broad swath as I can. But it's like the example, and some of you have heard this multiple times. I don't want to repeat myself, but perhaps many of you have not. The example of my friend way back, decades and decades ago, in the church I came up in and was the music director. His name was Walt. And he was quite the blue-collar guy, you know, and kind of intimidating, in fact. You know, and he became one of the deacons in the church and would collect the offering, never took off his leather jacket. You know, it's sort of like, you better put some money in the offering or you're going to meet this guy in a dark alley someplace, kind of thing. Cool guy, neat guy, but someone who I would have voted, if there were such a contest, most unlikely to ever own a classical music recording, right? And then one day he comes up to me after the service, all excited, because he had discovered Mozart. And he had fallen in love with Mozart. And he just could not get enough of Mozart. And what that became was a window into classical music in general, which, if you know the way I think, and you know many others, I think is kind of indisputable, really. The classical and the jazz are kind of two sides of the same coin, particularly historically. And Walt soon became a season ticket holder for the Philadelphia Orchestra, and then he would come to me after concerts and tell me what he thought. And he liked some of the other things. He didn't so much. He started to get some discernment. But when it came to Mozart, man, he was all in. And that discovery for him was his window. And, you know, that's how, you know, in some ideal, hopefully not fantasy world, I'd like to see myself. You know, not Mozart, but what I do, which is a window into all sorts of other things on the jazz side of the equation. And I still hold to that. But it's really impressing on me now that that's a surface description, and underneath of that surface description, the thing that's happening is inspiration. And yeah, I'm a discovery, but this is I'm uncomfortable because I like to let other people talk about me and not myself, particularly if it's positive or affirmative things. But I kind of have to do this way in order to communicate what's going on. I'm understanding that my purpose really is to inspire, and in that inspiration, there are discoveries, of course. But it's more than just I play old music. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, there's something more going on. And over the past couple of weeks, centered around Jazz Festival weekend in Rehoboth, but also continuing from that, almost like an epiphany moment where everything centers in one place and winds up in a tight ball of yarn where everything touches everything, and it's like, oh, ding, light bulb, right? And so many examples, and I'm going to just cite a few, both recent and not so recent. And one is a comment, not a comment, essentially a comment, but what Cody put as a description on a video he posted the first time he played Mainstay Monday with me in 2017. And it's a video of But Not For Me, him playing clarinet. And what he said there is, Joe Holt gets a lot more out of me than I should be able to play. And I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool, right? You've heard me say this before many times too. The speaking place and the playing place are two different places, and if I'm on with one, I'm not so on with the other, and I think I'm in between both of them, staring at each of them to some extent. Oh my goodness. So yeah, Cody Level, great friend, young, inspiring musician in his own right. And then after the end of the Jazz Festival weekend in Rehoboth and the True Blue Festival, there's two competing ones, is what I'm associated with. Mike McShane, my very good friend, drummer friend, who I do a ton of two-man rhythm section stuff with down there, just gave me a quote on his own, just came out of him and said, use this. And I will. I'll put it on my website. He says, what did he say? Yeah. If you've got it in you, Joel Holt will get it out of you. Cool. And this is a detour now, but those of you who know about the Mainstay Monday experience, where I presented, curated, developed, performed collaborative concerts every week for 4 years. Oh my goodness. Yeah, 200 plus concerts. After the pandemic, we did a few, and we kind of tried to close it up to move to another chapter. So it's 200 plus of those. And especially when it became the case that, I knew I had this forum, this ability to bring local musicians on the stage, who don't have notoriety or don't have bands or, don't perform professionally but have something to offer. And, in addition to, regional performers or occasionally national performers that I could bring in and collaborate with, when it went the other direction, the role of me being inspiring or grounding or like introducing a connection to them that they might not have experienced before kind of took more center stage. It was more apparent. It's always there, and that's the thing I'm really discovering. I mean, I always used to say, when I'm most comfortable when I'm accompanying, that's when everything is like centered. When that goes away and I'm by myself, it's a crapshoot. And I've learned how to navigate that in terms of the connection. And even my perspective about that is changing too, with regard to this, or evolving or growing, which is really cool. But I got to be in the role of, encourager, inspirer, bringing somebody, and this has been, again, I hate to say what other people say about me, but I hate even more to say it myself. But the theme was that I brought out of people, help them get to the next level, and that's, and that's just related to the big picture thing and the fact that there's so much up here that could get tangled up and get in my way. Give it a place to go. Give it a task. Give it purpose. Like, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do the, and then I'm out of my own way, and then all of a sudden I'm, doing something positive. Did that make any sense? I have no idea. But that's what a lot of what that Mainstay Monday thing was about. It continues to be about, to some extent, in the First Friday series at the Mainstay. But as I ponder this, it takes me back 50 years to my first encounter and continuing relationship with Joe Mediri. Now, I say Joe Mediri and not the Mediri brothers, in that Joe and Paul are two different animals, despite that they're identical twins. Very different temperaments, very different personalities. And in terms of, music and other things, Paul's very cerebral and very thought through, and he is funny. He can be a maniacal schemer on stage, and both Paul and Joe are very quick, you know, and if somebody quotes something, which of course happens to me every 10 seconds, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, you can just see Paul's wheels spinning, and then the next chorus of whatever tune it is has 17 different quotes of The Sound of Music in it. Because he's just like, well, you know, I can't do that. But Joe, I mean, who will do kind of the same thing, but comes at it from the way I come at it. And that connection, that what we call the radar, there are few people that it's just really, really strong and wide open with. And Joe Maderi was the first one. And it's a small group of people, really. That was just sort of the thing. You know, you finish each other's sentences, you inspire each other. And now that I'm like back, you know, the pendulum has swung back and forth over those 50 years in terms of me playing with them and then not, and then being in their band for a while and then doing separate things and all that. And now the pendulums come back and we just keep rediscovering that. And we had a really fun gig up in the greater Boston area the other weekend. It's what brought me up there and allowed me to do the concert at the Arts Center at Nazarene College, because I just combined them in the same time frame. And he's having a blast, and so am I, because it's like when I'm playing something, he's right on it. You know, and he's finishing the sentence, especially trading. He and I trading is just nuts. Now, trading fours or trading whatever. You know, and you know, we're both like, you know, 50 years down the path of being into this thing than we started. So, you know, you'd think it does go deeper, right? And yeah, it's intuitive connection is what it is. So I just had fun. I'm going to play one of the tunes we played in the cocktail hour for that big wedding extravaganza we went up there for. Little besame mucho for what it's worth. So, again, talking about the intuitive connection, communicating without words. And not unrelated, this is a very surface example, and you've heard me say this before, many of you, but not unrelated to what I try to do with young beginner students, like almost immediately. And this is one of my pet little peeves about piano instruction. That the most important thing is that you develop a relationship to the pulse of music. Wherever you are musically, culturally, stylistically. And even if, it's the fluid pulse, it's still a pulse, right? And you need to communicate within that pulse. So within the first, couple of lessons, we're starting to talk about defining the one. And I'll even say this, to anybody, a lot of times won't care what happens in between the ones. Define that one, right? So you get the little beginner student. It's not about playing the notes evenly. It's not about steady counting. It's about defining the one. And everything else falls into place because that gives you that thing which allows the music to communicate. So now the music is communicating. And rhythm is essential in that. And forgive me if you've heard me say this before 47 times, but when there's someone else in the room with a beginner student, I'll say, hey, wait, listen to, this person play the little thing. You can go ahead and play. And they know that they have to define the one. Not just to play it louder, not some mechanical thing, but they know where it is. And without fail, the person listening is always tapping their foot. And I say, hey, look over there. They're tapping their foot to what you're doing. Am I out of the loop? Did you arrange with them that they would tap their foot? And we just go into this whole thing. It's like, how did you do that? That's magical. What? No. You see, that's like a very surface example of that connection that's something more than cognitive thought, right? It starts there. And in the many, many discoveries I've had along the way that helped me with this, a very, very important person in that is Beth McDonald, who you've heard me talk about. A singer-songwriter, very, very deep singer-songwriter. We have certainly inspired each other over the going on 20 years now that we've known each other, and we have that among others is an ongoing musical artistic path and a friendship path, and she's not a jazz musician. In fact, she'll tell you, I don't like jazz. Of course, I'm the guy who wants people to say, after a concert, who I love when they say this, I don't like jazz, but I like you. So I think we'll put Beth in that category, right? But I so respect what she does as a songwriter and her process, and that certainly inspires me, and I inspire her. And yes, that's what this is about. One of her one album, 12 years ago now, Good Night. She just asked me kind of on the spot in the studio where there was an acoustic piano to play instrumentally one of the songs. One called Haunted, which is a beautifully written song. And I did, and she fell in love with it, and the CD closes with that instrumental track. I'll have to find that and share it. I do every so many years on Facebook. I'll play another tune that's more recent than that. And there's just beautiful tunes, inspiring. I should say, there's no lyrics here. The lyrics really, I've learned from Beth, speaking of inspiration, that's where I really began to incorporate the idea of the lyrics, meaning, right? And, it's another layer and level of what gets into your heart, right? Uh, and as an instrumental musician, it's a long time coming to get me to like, what, really? It's not just scat singing I should listen to? Oh, okay. Anyway, so you don't get the lyrics to this, but it's called When the Water Falls, and you can find it if you can find that singing it if you search for it. There we go. All right. So, I mentioned Joe Madeira, I mentioned Bev McDonald. More recently, much more recently, well, in the last few years, would be Sharon Sable. And a fun experience with Sharon, and that's what I'm doing the Blossom Theory project with. Can't wait. We can't wait for you all to hear that. This is a special thing, and she has had I'm losing words, relationship with Andrea Clearfield Salon up in Philadelphia that's been going on for 36 years. And funny, that's kind of where I'm from. This South Jersey, but just like 5 minutes over the bridge. Of course, I've been away from that area for 30 years, but I'm still kind of connected with it. I had no idea it was going on. And it's really cool. And maybe by the time you see this, I'll be able to share the video on Facebook of the salon. And so we had a really cool experience over the weekend up there. And it was evident, you know, it is to both of us, but also to everybody else, that we share the space. You know, and I could say that about Beth, I could say it about Joe Madiri. You know, you're in that space together. You know, and unlike some things that I describe with, like, you know, maybe non-professional musicians or people who have something to offer but are finding their way, and you know, it's not, it's a hand holding, but it's a hand holding and leading. You know, this is just like a hand holding, and it's just, you know, kind of like the two things becoming one thing, or the multiple things becoming one thing, or like my friend Bruce Kaminsky would say, from another angle, that two or more people can make music together is proof of the existence of God, right? And we just had a 10-minute set, and that kind of thing I was never ever comfortable with. You know, it's been, yeah, I'll just say that, never comfortable with. But it's like, okay, that's what it is. We had 3 tunes, we fit it in, you know, easily. We knew we could do it. And I got there, and in the first tune, I was not entirely centered. Yeah, but oh my goodness, you know, there was Sharon kind of drawing me in and centering me. So like the first tune's okay, you know. I mean, I can get really caught up in my head. I'm kind of here, you know. That last tune was better, but I'm not totally open up here when I'm playing, and it's hard when I'm talking. But then, of course, that can just cause a cascade of nonsense, you know, because you got to clear your head, and you got to have it clear before you get in. And you know, in that experience with Sharon, you just get centered in the collective space, right? And then the next tune was just there, and the last tune was just there. Everything actually was there, but it's just like, yes, 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 yes. It's not here, it's here, and it was very, very, very well received. And of course, everybody loved Sharon. And then when I was finished, pianist from Philly, he and I had known of each other for a long time, but never met. We have a mutual friend, Jim Delorfus, and oh my goodness, was he encouraging and enthusiastic and everything. But what he just kept coming back to was playing from the heart, playing from the heart. And I'd say, yeah, and accompanying Sharon will bring that out of me. You know, so it's like I can be an inspiration to others, and then others who have something of themselves to offer inspire me, and then that's how this goes, right? Yeah. So from the heart. Not exactly the same theme, but just because the tune has the word heart in it, I guess. But it's a little more than that. Yeah, young at heart. Cute, right? Or something. But, when you express from your heart, not your contrivances and your thoughts, it reaches and communicates to the hearts of others, as opposed to the contrivances and thoughts of others. Now, it's not a straight dichotomy, and I'm not saying that, and I'm not disparaging anybody's cerebral anything. I'm talking about my path and sharing it with you because I hope that you can find some inspiration in it for yourself, applying it to your place, right? That's the whole deal here. Just sharing, right? We've all heard examples like this. Mine was I watched some opera singer being not reviewed, interviewed, and he said, when I give a concert and people go home and the next day they don't remember what I sang for them, but they will remember how it made them feel. And that's what I'm talking about. So there are so many musicians who have inspired me. Coming up with Joe Madeira, you know the story. I was 14 years old. He was 16. He comes in the band room at Triton Regional High School. He and his brother Paul. They never played musical instruments before, ever. And Joe walks out with a clarinet because he knew somebody who played one. And Paul walks out with a trumpet. And I think they were both going to play trombone, but each of them decided, each of them thought the other was going to play trombone, so they picked a different instrument, and then neither of them had a trombone. Paul eventually took up trombone. But then, as it all worked out, within a week, Joe had heard Benny Goodman for the first time and said, "What instrument is that?" And Paul said, "That's the instrument that you got in that case from school." And he put it together and was all inspired to do the whole Benny Goodman thing. And within a few weeks, he's eking out Benny Goodman licks on his, plastic Bundy clarinet and looking at his fingering chart to figure out how to do it, right? And he plies me with Benny Goodman Trio records. I'm 14 years old, and that's what gets me into this whole thing, listening to Teddy Wilson. And that was inspiring for sure. I was really drawn in, and that was my discovery window, right? Teddy Wilson was my Mozart who brought me in, and then things related to that I quickly grasped onto, and I wrote down three initial pianists early on who were just very influential in opening my awareness. Teddy Wilson, Fats Waller, Art Tatum. Art Tatum. Oh my goodness. I was actually 17 at that point, and I had a trumpet teacher because trumpet was my double, and I was a horrible trumpet player. But had my lessons with Buddy Pastor, And so he asked me, because he knew I was primarily a piano player, "What do you think of Art Tatum?" I said, "Who?" He like chastised me and said, "You think you're going to be a jazz pianist and you haven't heard of Art Tatum? Go buy a record now, today." And I did. I went to the record store and I bought Piano Starts Here. And I still have it somewhere, an LP. I was 17, and that was that had the first 4 cuts that he recorded in the studio when he was 17. And of course, I purposed never to play the piano again. Like Oscar Peterson when he heard Art Tatum. Although it only lasted a week for me, and then I started to play again. But I would consider those, if I'm going to make the dichotomy, I wouldn't consider those inspirations so much. I mean, yes, in the dichotomy, though, discoveries. If I'm, transitioning or contrasting discovery and inspiration, or putting, discovery as a part of inspiration, or vice versa. But then thereafter along the way, I can, 3 pianists right off the bat that deeply inspire me and continue to inspire me, in a way that Teddy Wilson, Fats Waller, and Art Tatum don't. Now, they will inspire other people, in a way that they don't inspire me, because we're all different. But who really speaks to me and continues to speak to me? Oscar Peterson, Keith Jarrett, Dave McKenna, all for different reasons. But oh man, I can remember the first time hearing all 3. I actually never heard Oscar on a record. I've heard him live first at a concert. Because I went to the concert to hear Ella, and the Oscar trio was opening, and I'm like, oh my god, I was not prepared. I was not prepared for Oscar. Oh my gosh, so much to talk about that. I'll have to keep that separate. And I should make a note. Talk about this, inspirations. Keith Jarrett spent an hour watching one video over and over and over and over, and all sorts of things came to me and opened up, and yeah. But Dave McKenna, I was probably still a teenager, watching the Merv Griffin show. Daytime TV, late 1970s. And of course, those guys, Johnny Carson included, those talk shows, Dinah Shore, they were like musicians, big band singers. Dinah Shore and Merv Griffin. Johnny Carson was a drummer, I think. And so they had all their, they brought that culture, the TV, and the older generation who would watch daytime TV, that suit them, and it was right in my wheelhouse. So I see Dave McKenna in the Merv Griffin show, and he's playing Sweet Georgia Brown, and he's walking his left-hand bass. And it's just like, everything opens up. Because I'm already like the stride player and don't know how to play with a bass player effectively yet anyway. And it's like, I know how to fill up the space, and it's like, I could have thought of that, but there was some like barrier, force field that didn't give me permission until I saw him do it. And boy, how he did it, right? And that was one of those moments that just changed everything for me going forward. That was, oh my goodness, was that an inspiration? So I won't play just like Dave McKenna, nobody does, but I'm inspired. was anticlimactic, wasn't it? I'm running out of juice slightly. Or something. But here's a biggie. I can easily get focused on what I can't do or don't do. Because there's so much that I can't do. So much. And for the most part, I don't let people see what that is. Because I just don't do it. You know, when going to be, I practice it and stuff. You know, one would be to have any relationship with flying Sondheim. Oh my goodness, I just can't, I cannot process it. It does not compute, it cannot happen. Yeah. But that will dull my sense to the fact that what I am doing, what I can do and am doing, is actually doing something. You know, does that make sense? I'm going to say it again. I can easily get focused on what I can't or don't do, and my sense is dulled to the fact that what I am doing is actually doing something. Hope that made sense. And does that relate to you? That's a glass half full, glass half empty thing. That's also perhaps like a manifestation thing. You know, we create the reality that we focus on in here, right? And we have to let this go and let this create our circumstances, right? So in terms of like shifting my focus or my sense of like who I am and what I do, like being a discovery versus being an inspiration, you know, related, but you know, one sort of moving to the other in terms of emphasis. Here's another one. And I came to this like a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago. Worked it out in a blog entry, which when I have the time and I'm focused to do that, you know, I often start those blog journal entries, you know, without knowing where it's going to go and allow it to go someplace. And because as a soloist, right, I'm not one of these flashy, get your attention, you know, players in the first 30 seconds and look what he can do. You know, I'm somebody who, you know, will reach you over a period of time, right? And, you know, I can reliably do that, you know, and it's like, so what am I doing when I do that? And I'm listing like what the traits and characteristics of an accompanist are, and I'm realizing that those things are what I'm also doing with regard to the audience. You know, connecting with and all of that. So it's like, okay, so my piano performances are like accompanying the audience too. But how is that? Accompanying the experience of the audience. So that sounds good, and I think it's, you know, going the right way. But I think inspiring the audience brings it into more focus. And again, of course, that's an inspiration coming back. You know, for the longest time, really just until recent years, I was never comfortable being on stage receiving applause. You know, because my head just says, you know, for one, I kind of sucked, or, you know, or yeah, right, okay, I'm doing this in public display, so you're clapping for it. But what about the guy who like is an impeccable dishwasher, you know, back in the kitchen, and nobody applauds him? So why should you applaud me? I just go through all of this, you know, nonsense, and then it finally dawns on me that, you know, inspiration begets inspiration, gratitude begets gratitude. You know, the heart receives, the heart gives. And, you know, it is just coming back. And so it does become, to some extent, you know, there's other emotional things involved, but to some extent at least, it becomes a measure of the effectiveness of the communication, right? So it just helps me to bring it into even more focus. So, for what it's worth, and I have no idea what I'm going to play. Okay, because every time I've started to play, because I like to go like right from the talking right into the playing, and I have not even taken 2 seconds to center myself before any tune I played. And I realize it, and then that just becomes this like, Joe, you stupid dummy, right? Yeah, I'm Fred Sanford. Yeah, you're you're a dummy. You're stupid. You're a stupid dummy. But anyway, and it's like because it's stillness, and it's got to be still. So I need to, I need to stop, right? I need to stop. There it is. What was I playing? Whatever. So I hope that's informative, useful, inspiring, helpful, not a total waste of time. And we do this almost every, but essentially every Wednesday, 7 p.m. See you tomorrow night for Piano for My Friends. Thank you for being here. Lots going on. Keep in touch with my website and find out. I need to look at my calendar and find out where I'm supposed to be tonight. I forget already. Okay, bye.